We keep this train rolling along. There he is, the gangster. This time, he didn't sleep through it. How about it? Chael Sonnet, how are you, my friend?
I think I'm even early. I'm trying to get even with you.
Thank you very much for joining us. You know, you're in that rare category, that rare company. You're on episode 200 and 300. There's only a select few that can claim that. I hope you appreciate it.
I don't, Helwani, but now that I know it, I'll take it under consideration. It's not looking great in the consideration department, though, in the appreciation department. I know what my ratings are, brother. I know what side of the bread is buttered here, but let's just move on.
Okay, what did you, by the way, what did you make of Saturday, what DC did on Saturday? Were you as impressed as all of us?
Well, oh, man, with both of those guys. With both of them. Poor Gustafsson. You know, poor Gustafsson. I really agreed with the call. Some people didn't. I thought that on a 10-9 less system that Daniel won 3 of those rounds. I thought it was peculiar from a talking point when the judges' scorecards came out that the round that Gustafsson dropped DC in, he lost that round on 2 of the 3 cards. I think that's a talking point. But I thought the fight went the right way. And what about the reversal of roles? I mean, Gustafsson out-wrestling Cormier, Cormier out-striking Gustafsson. It was incredible. When those guys, Aaron, here's the thing, and fighters will get this, but I hope that you do too. And when you have a plan in a fight and all hell breaks loose and that plan doesn't work and you have to switch strategies midstream, it's a very tough thing to do. You've got to regain your composure. You got to go to plan B. And, you know, that's what Cormier did. Gustafsson did too. Gustafsson also realized he wasn't going to be able to use that range and reach and have the striking advantage. But it was incredible. It was incredible from that standpoint for me.
When DC won the belt, you said, that's not the real belt. He should give it back. How do you feel about him now as champion after what he did on Saturday?
Well, I don't know if I said he should give it back. It is a peculiar thing that happened with Jon Jones. They took a guy's title who never lost and they didn't cut him. That's weird. There's no way around that. I'm stating a fact right there, not an opinion. That's a weird thing to do. It's never happened before. So I think that that's a tough spot, but they had to strip him, and the world must go on. I don't object to DC stepping in and being the real champion by any means. But I agree with DC. I heard what he said in his last interview, and he needs to fight Jones, and I loved his attitude that he even needs to fight Jones 2 more times.
You know Jon Jones. Do you think he'll be back? And which weight class?
He'll be back. He'll be back at 205. I think that there is some speculation that he could come back at heavyweight. Jon Jones has weighed 225 pounds for the last 10 years. That's just what he walks around at. That's what he gets in the ring. And he's never really lost any weight. He's never really gained any weight. So I don't think there'll be a need to go to heavyweight, but there might be an interest there where he has some fun. Look, if he wants to make some money, and he does, that fight's with Daniel Cormier for right now. But Jones, you know, he could bounce around. He could build another fight at heavyweight. I just think his encouragement will be for 205.
One last thing on Saturday. What about your old running mate, Rashad Evans? What would you make of how he looked in there?
Okay, so I'm on the other side of it, Aaron. I thought Rashad looked really good. Now let me explain.
Please.
You're going to have some ring rust. You're going to slow down a little bit, and that's going to take away some of your reaction time. So when it came to who was touching who the most, he was getting hit for sure. And so that side of it, I think, was a little bit to be expected. However, he also pushed the pace. He charged forward. When he hit the ground, he scrambled up. I thought that his conditioning was really good. I thought his grit was really good. To Ryan Bader's compliment, he forced Bader to fight backing up and going side to side, which isn't something that Bader does. He's a big, blocky guy. So Bader also showed some new skills and was successful with them. I don't think you could possibly make a case against Ryan Bader to be the number 1 contender. I don't know that anybody's trying to make that case, but they've come up short, man. Bader in his last 5 wins has beat 2 UFC world champions. He beat the current Bellator world champion in one of those with Phil Davis. Bader looked outstanding. But I thought that Rashad really did push forward. Well, you got to understand, he's been out of the ring for 2 years. He's going to get hit. He's going to be a little slow on those reactions, and he was.
So you believe that there's a thing called ring rust, that it's real? Because when I would bring this up to Dominic Cruz all weekend long, he would get like super pissed off. He says, it's not real. It's a figment of your imagination. All this stuff. You believe it's a real thing. It affects fighters.
I think that it can affect you in one way, which is it will put your reactions a little bit off. It's something that you can shake off pretty quickly. The bad news in our sport is, okay, let's say Rashad just went out there and he shook some of that off. He doesn't get to redeem himself for another 3, 4, 5 months. So that can be a hard thing emotionally. But physically, he will look better in his next fight. And don't forget, I mean, he was in there with a guy that's on a 5-fight streak that is the number one contender. Rashad's been out for 2 years. Rashad should have got blown away. And, I thought that he really stood his ground. And, again, he pushed forward. He had great conditioning. He scrambled really well. But he got out-hit. I mean, that happened too. Good for Fedor.
Speaking of ring rust, what kind of ring rust are you expecting when you return to the octagon next year?
I won't be back, but I would tell you, Errol, if I was to stand up right now and step in there, I would suffer a little of that too. I think a way to counter that, and it's probably what Dominic was trying to relay to you before he blew a circuit, and I wasn't even there for the conversation. I just know Dominic well enough to know how he responded to you. But, you can work that out in the gym. I think the real truth on Rashad, should it ever be, I don't think he's been in the gym all that much. I know he went every day, even twice a day. He helped Vitor with camps. He helped some of his other teammates. But I think as far as live sparring goes, I think he's been back for about 6.5 weeks. That's a number that I heard specifically from some guys out there. So while he was working on his body and staying fit a little bit, as far as that reaction and knowing when to move and when to block, I think he had a little less than 2 months at that. Dominic, on the other hand, is in the room sparring, and he's at a high level. So I think in Dominic's case, he makes a fair point that he doesn't suffer from that like a lot of guys could.
So you're telling me right here, right now, episode 300, Uncle Dana, Uncle Frank, Uncle Lorenzo, no one has called you and said, Chael, what are you doing July 9th, 2016, UFC 200? We need the bad guy. No one has said this to you yet. Because I'm expecting that phone call to happen.
For UFC 200, no, I haven't been offered any fight for UFC 200. I would not. If you're asking me if I can just cut to that and tell you no. If you want to just make conversation, I love doing that too. I don't know, Errol. I'm suspended somewhere real close to there. I think my suspension's up on June 20th, but it could be as far as July 12th. I can't recall because my hearing was on roughly July 12th. But take Anderson, for example, what he went through. They made it retroactive. Same thing with Hector Lombard. They made it retroactive to the day when the test came in, which mine was on or about June 20th. So I don't think that that's realistic anyway.
Are you getting the itch, though?
My getting the itch, man, I never really lose it. Like when I go to bed at night, I do still fantasize about that. But I fantasize about a lot of things, man. It's Olympic year. I'm a big amateur wrestling fan. I watch a lot of amateur wrestling. I still think about that, too. I think, I could get out there and score a couple of points on those guys. But, come on. I envision a lot of things when I have my alone time.
But just for the record, you're not planning on coming back. I feel like I need to ask you this because we talked about it last time. Right now, you're sticking to your guns.
I am not coming back.
Okay.
No, I'm not putting a toe in the water. I don't know how to speak any more clear.
Fair enough. I know you've had your history with them, and you're still suspended, so maybe you have to tread lightly. If not, I appreciate that as well. What did you make of the Nick Diaz situation and the way they handled that, NAC?
Well, look, they've got a really wide scope, and that has to be understood. People are saying they're out of their lane here. I think that's going to be for a judge to decide. But as far as their scope goes, they can do that. I wish that there would be some explanation. When a guy stubs his toe, and Nick did, Nick's wrong here. But there is a question of how wrong was he? What kind of violation is this? Is this a lifetime ban? You'd call it 5 years, but as you know, Aaron, that's a lifetime ban in the sport. I was really surprised by it. I was really surprised because there is a precedent set. There's always something, particularly in a format that has jurisdiction and binding decisions, that precedence matters, and this was unprecedented. So there needs to be an explanation more than anything, whether it's my situation or his or what. We need to be able to at least have a teaching moment. I need to at least be able to go to guys and go, look, don't do this, and tell them why. I'm not sure Diaz could have that conversation right now. I think right now he was talking to a group of people. I think he's maybe a little confused. We're owed an explanation. That's fair.
Absolutely. Do you think it's time we have a national commission as opposed to these state regulated commissions where it's just across the board, one group that oversees things, and there's uniformity and we can really know what to expect? Because even here, as crazy as the whole situation was, we were expecting worst case 3 years because that's what they said, 3 years for a third offense. He gets 5 because apparently they think he's disrespecting them. That's not right.
Yeah, I agree. And, I might push back on one part of your statement, which was 3 years for third offense.
That's not right
help
either,
me out
right?
here, but I believe that's I believe that's the new rule that kicked in on or about July 1st. He wouldn't be subject to that. He would be subject to the rules at the time that he fought, and he fought on or about January 30th. It might have been January 31st. Yeah. So that's the rules he would be subject to. I'm not sure he was eligible for a 3-year ban at that time. I know that's been misreported by the media, but in a worst-case scenario, I will concede your point. A worst, just terrible case scenario, yeah, he was looking at 36 months. And I'm not sure that they wouldn't review it. I'm not sure, just kind of knowing that commission, if Nick went in and said, guys, let's try this again. Let's try this again. Something I wanted to tell you that I forgot, and it kind of made his case, and I think that they would listen to him, and I think that that's probably where this is going to go. If it doesn't go there, it's going to go to a judge. We've already seen Vanderlei have some success. I don't think that Nick's would be any different, but the whole thing's a delay. Even if you look at what happened with Vanderlei, so he goes before a judge. Now he's got to go back to a higher judge, and then what happens if he wins there? He has to go back to the commission. When you kick that can down the road, that suspension's in place. There's no retroactive way for him to recoup the time lost here, whether it was just time or even the monetary damages. So there's not a lot of power an athlete has.
You recently made your television analyst debut for World Series of Fighting, a great card in Arizona. Do you enjoy that? Like, if I ask you, do you enjoy being in the studio at the desk or calling the action from a color commentator perspective? Which do you enjoy more?
I enjoy them all. John Anik had told me a number of years ago that the pinnacle of sport, commentator and broadcast, the pinnacle of that is live sport, is to be able to call live sport. I never got that. I never saw it that way. I never had a goal to do that. But I think I agree with them, man. It was very fun. I couldn't really tell you why, but there was an actual excitement that it was live, that there was no redos, that you've got this fantastic seat. And I can tell, man, the night flew by. We were there for about 4 hours, and it probably felt like 20 to 30 minutes. It was fun. It was easy to do.
Fedor Emelianenko recently spurned the UFC once again. He's going back to Japan, his old boss, Saki Kabara. We've had some conversations about the Pride Days and what you thought of those matchups. What do you make of Fedor's decision? I think a lot of people thought finally he would come, the time is right. He didn't do that. He's going back to Saki Kabara. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, really good move. I think that if you can model your career, around Fedor, in the short term, it looks very good. Here's what a fighter needs to do. I see these guys come out all the time. Now they're calling out top 15 guys. I don't even know what a top 15 guy is, right? When I was fighting, you wanted the number one guy. You wanted a championship fight. If you were a bum and you were doing a call-out, you call out a top 10 guy. Now you've got these super bums that are calling out anybody in the top 15. Hell, some of these brackets only have 16 and 17 guys signed. They want a top 15 guy. Oh, okay. Well, let's take... Here's what you want to do. You want to fight the easiest guy that you can for the biggest paycheck, okay? And Fedor, he's doing that really well. Who's in Japan right now? What's the parity? Who are they going to match him up with? Geez, there's not even a sweepstakes for Fedor right now. There's no division whatsoever, so the likelihood that he gets an easy draw and sells a bunch of tickets doing it, I think there's a pretty good chance there, and I think for his skill set and where he's at, that makes sense. Don't forget, he's not coming back to try to win championships. He's coming back to make some money. So I think with his goals and where they were at and him being able to assess his skills, fans assess Fedor constantly. They have no idea what they're talking about. I hear things said about Fedor where I'm just sitting there rolling my eyes just going, all right, fair enough. I had to live through this with Kimbo Slice. I had to live through this where the fans' perception gets so far off and they don't know what they're seeing. Fedor can give a very good assessment of himself. He knows where he's at. So when he puts himself over there in Japan and goes, man, I can make a few bucks doing this. I can stay busy, and I don't have to fight those guys in the UFC. That ends the argument. His fans always want to come out and go, but you do so well in the UFC. Look, if he's telling you that he won't, you got to listen to him.
In your opinion, is Fedor the most overrated fighter in UFC history? In MMA history?
I would actually need some time to think about that. I don't believe that off the top of my head that he would be, though. Your next question is probably, well, then who is? I don't think that's right. He's definitely overrated. But you got to understand, he's not that highly rated. The people that watch your show, the people that listen to my podcast, man, we have some hardcore fans. they watched him over in Japan. They watched some of those matches, and they're more than happy to forget when he came to the States and actually did a sanctioned fight with a real referee that's not wearing an earpiece. They forgot about those. The average human being doesn't have the foggiest idea who he is, and history is not going to reflect well on Fedor Emelianenko as far as his MMA career goes. So I don't know that I would agree that he is overrated. You've got some of the hardcore guys on the internet, and they've got their opinion. I think those opinions matter, but they make up a very small base.
You know, it's funny. I was watching the UFC 193 pre-fight press conference, and your name was coming up all over the place, in particular when people were talking to Holly Holm, because apparently, and I missed this, I will say I try to catch your podcast as much as possible, but I guess I missed where you said it. You were saying basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, the accomplishments that we're talking about as far as boxing titles and all that, it's not all that it seems to be. Is that what you were saying about her, that she's been a little bit propped up here?
Well, there's no – look, I don't recognize any. I think she has 17 world. This is a very nice girl. Okay, I've never met Holly. She has a tremendous reputation. People love Holly. They don't just go, yeah, she's all right. They go on and on about what a great teammate she is and what a great person she is. I want to make that clear too before I start throwing stones here. She is making a claim that she's a 17-time world champion. I will tell you, as an analyst, she has 0 world championships. There is no validity to any one of those titles. In her defense, if she enters an event and that promoter calls it the world title and puts a belt around her, I think she's got the right to put it on her resume. But as you look, from a wrestling background where we have a real world champion, the way you have a world champion, Ariel, you got to follow Olympic Games standards. You take the entire planet Earth, you let anybody that raises their hand with a pulse work them way down through a bracketed tournament format until one human is left standing, and that's the guy you put the gold medal around. That never happened in any of those 17 championships. She showed up to some event. The promoter needed a main event, and so he called that main event a world title. That's not a knock on her, but that's what happened. And I'm not going to sit back as an analyst and call her a world champion, let alone 17 times. If she beats Ronda Rousey, we're having a totally different. She's the world champion.
Does she have a shot?
That's a very fair point by me.
Does she have a shot against Ronda, in your opinion?
No, not anywhere. Not anywhere. You know, again, she's got some skills. You'll hear the expression "a puncher's chance," but she's not very good at punching. Those boxing championships, again, those aren't real. And I'm not sure she could outstrike Ronda. She definitely can't out-grapple her. I wish her all the best. And every time Ronda fights, I think, well, this is going to be a bit of a tough one here, but Holly's ranked number 5 in the division. That might even be a little bit lofty, but she's somewhere in there. She is undefeated. She is very tough. She knows how to compete well, which most of those girls don't. That's really what sets Ronda apart. But no, she just doesn't have that. She's not at that level.
What's going on with you and Josh Barnett? Are you going to compete against him at Metamoris? You originally said it was on the table. He said no. What's going on here?
I believe it's 100% going to happen.
Okay.
I believe it's going to happen sooner rather than later, like as in the next month. It is not signed. We verbally agreed to it. The problem that we run into is Metamoris doesn't have a locked-in date for us. Their next show is October 23rd. That's called Metamoris 7. Howlett Gracie's approach is to do everything at the last minute, to advertise it, to sell it, to bring in attention, to put out the highlight reels and do it at the last, hit the fans hard and let them know you don't have very long to wait. So that show's coming up, and then Josh and I will be part of a different event. But they own a studio now. It's much like you've got, Ariel. He owns a studio now, so he doesn't have to do an entire card. If he wants to just bring in Josh and I, he can. If he wants to put a card together, he can. He can turn on the cameras and hold a match that way. And I know he's considering doing some of that. So Josh and I are kind of just waiting to hear. But I do go to practice every day, and I do have Josh Barnett on my mind.
Were you impressed with his win over Roy Nelson?
I was blown away. Blown away. Josh Barnett weighed in at 239 pounds. Roy Nelson comes real close to the heavyweight limit of 265. If you watched that fight and didn't know what I had just told you, you would think Josh Barnett is the bigger guy. He was pushing Roy Nelson around. Roy spent most of that fight with his back up against the cage because he couldn't move. Josh's leverage was incredible. And then the stuff that he does from a clinch, from short-range fighting with the elbows and the knees, it's violent and it's vicious, and it's very hard to practice that stuff. You can't go into practice and start elbowing and kneeing, your workout partners or you won't have any workout partners. So I don't even know how he develops those skills. I've always wondered that when I watch Josh fight. How do you get so good at using some of these close range attacks? But Josh Barnett is one of the best ever. And usually when you talk about a heavyweight, you'll say, well, he's one of the best heavyweight fighters ever. You can take the word heavyweight out of it when you talk about Josh Barnett. He is one of the best ever. When I say one of the best, he is in the top 3 best to have ever done this sport.
Wow.
Don't forget, he's the UFC heavyweight champion that never lost the championship. People forget that. Josh Barnett's back in the UFC to reclaim a championship that he never lost. That should be the headline. If I'm Josh Barnett, that's the tweet I would have sent out when I re-signed.
Great point. Final thing, what about your boy Uriah Hall? Has he finally stepped up? Is he finally realizing his potential?
No, absolutely not. He's having some good success. He is so good. He is so good. He should have never been touched. Those kicks and that flurry he did in that second round with Gegard, he could have done that in the first 10 seconds. Now, Mousasi's a special talent. I'm not saying Hall walks out there and walks through Mousasi. I'm just talking about Uriah's skill set. He's a very, very special talent. It takes him a little bit to get going. Coach Clayton Hires has to warm him up in the back so hard to try to get that first round out of him in the locker room. He's getting closer. Okay, he's getting closer. Uriah used to not come on until 7 or 8 minutes into the fight. Now he's coming in about 4 minutes, 5.5 minutes in. No, you are not seeing his full potential. He's better than this. He's flat scary. That combination you saw is things that highlight reels are made of. Arrow, he can do that stuff all day long.
Chael, I got to say, I reached out to a lot of people to be on this show. Meant a lot to us. You responded literally within 30 seconds. You were the quickest. You responded right off the bat. You were the first person to actually say, I'll be on the show. That meant the world to me. Thank you so much. You're a good pal. I appreciate it greatly. It wouldn't have been a 300th episode without you. So again, thank you for the time, and great job with that WSOF broadcast. Really enjoyed it, and I hope that you will be doing more.
It certainly would not have been, but I want to tell you, brother, 300 is a very rare mark that people get to. You've earned it. You worked your ass off. I wanted to miss this show. And in closing, I want to tell you a joke going around. What is 6 feet tall, dashing, charming, and disappears out of nowhere?
Kaboom. There he is, Chael Sonnet, the one and only. Great stuff from him. Appreciate him coming on.